Have you ever given someone everything, absolutely everything, only to discover they were simply waiting for the right moment to throw you away? The pain isn't in the betrayal itself. It's in realizing how long they must have been planning it. How many dinners they sat across from you, smiling, while underneath they were calculating what your life was worth to them. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I want to know how many other people have discovered that sometimes those who claim to love you the most are just waiting for you to become inconvenient. My name is Lillian Harlow. For 35 years, I was the CFO of Meridian Properties, one of the largest real estate development companies in Connecticut. I started as an accountant when I was 24, newly married to Henry with a baby on the way. By the time Henry died from a sudden heart attack 15 years later, I was already senior management. We had 2 children then, Olivia, 13, and Xavier, 11. The morning of my 65th birthday began like any other day. I woke at 5:30 a.m., made a cup of Earl Grey tea, and watched the sunrise from my study window. The Connecticut countryside was beautiful in early autumn, all crimson and gold against a pale blue sky. I'd bought this house after selling our family home in Greenwich 4 years ago. Henry and I had always talked about retiring to a place with land, somewhere peaceful. He never got to see it, but I'd finally made it happen. My retirement from Meridian was just 3 weeks away. After decades of meticulous financial planning, I had built a comfortable nest egg. My pension, substantial investments, this mortgage-free property, and several commercial buildings that generated steady rental income. I had made provisions for my children in my will, of course, but I intended to enjoy my retirement, travel, perhaps even write the historical novel I'd been researching for years. Around 9, my phone lit up with birthday messages. Olivia, now 38 and a surgeon married to another doctor, sent a text. "Happy birthday, Mom. Can't wait to see you tonight." Xavier, 36 and running the tech company I'd helped him start, called briefly between meetings. "The party's going to be amazing, Mom. We've got some special surprises planned." How perfectly that word would turn out to fit. Surprises. The party was scheduled for 7 that evening at my home. I had offered to host. I enjoyed entertaining, and it gave me control over when guests would leave. At my age, I valued my sleep schedule. Olivia had insisted on handling the catering and decorations, which was unusual. My daughter normally avoided party planning with the same intensity she applied to her surgical procedures. "Let us take care of everything," she had said the week before. "You've done enough for us all these years." The first guests arrived at 6:30, old colleagues from Meridian, a few neighbors, my book club friends. By 7, the house was filled with conversation and laughter. My children arrived last, each with their spouses. Olivia's husband Daniel carried in several bottles of wine, while Xavier's wife Aurora brought an elaborately decorated cake. "Mom, you look amazing," Olivia said, embracing me. She was tall like her father, with the same quick smile that never quite reached her eyes. "The sapphire pendant looks perfect on you." The necklace had been their gift the previous Christmas, a stunning piece I rarely wore because it felt too extravagant, but tonight seemed special enough to warrant it. "Thank you, darling. I'm glad you're here." Xavier hugged me next, his cologne expensive and unfamiliar. "Happy birthday, Mom." He handed me a small wrapped box, just a little something extra. Inside was a silver bracelet engraved with my initials. "It's beautiful," I said, genuinely touched. "You didn't have to." "Of course we did." He smiled, exchanging a quick glance with his sister that I couldn't quite interpret. "It's not every day your mother turns 65. The evening progressed pleasantly enough. We ate the catered dinner, an excellent selection of my favorite foods, and I received thoughtful gifts from my friends. Around 9, Olivia clinked her glass for attention. "We have a special presentation," she announced. The room quieted as Xavier wheeled in a cart with a single bottle of wine and crystal glasses. "This," he said dramatically, lifting the bottle, "is a 1958 Chateau Margaux, the year of your birth, Mom. We've been searching for it for months." The bottle looked authentic enough, with a faded label and wax seal. I was impressed, despite myself. Such vintages could cost thousands. "To the woman who gave us everything." Olivia said as Xavier poured the deep red liquid into glasses. Enjoy your retirement. Everyone was watching, smiling, as the wine was distributed. I accepted my glass, noting how my children's eyes followed the movement. There was something oddly intent in their expressions. Expectant, almost. I raised the glass to my nose, a habit Henry had taught me during our honeymoon in France. Wine should be experienced with all senses, he would say. The aroma hit me immediately, complex notes of aged fruit and oak, but underneath, something else. Something wrong. A chemical sharpness that didn't belong. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I saw my children watching me, their smiles fixed but eyes calculating, and I understood with sudden terrible clarity. Decades of reviewing financial statements had taught me to recognize patterns, to sense when numbers didn't add up. The unusual interest in hosting my party, the insistence on serving the wine themselves, the way they'd been asking pointed questions about my estate planning for months. I raised my glass with the others. Thank you all for coming, I said, looking directly at my children. Their eager expressions chilled me. I pretended to sip, letting only the smallest amount touch my lips before setting the glass down. Throughout the rest of the evening, I maintained the pretense, holding my glass, occasionally raising it, but never drinking. By 11, most guests had left, and I made a show of growing tired. Such a wonderful night, I said, my words slightly slurred. I think I need to lie down. We'll clean up, Xavier offered quickly. You just rest, Mom. Yes, Olivia agreed. You look a bit flushed. Do you feel all right? Their concern would have seemed genuine to anyone else, but I had raised these children. I knew their tells. The slight twitch at the corner of Xavier's mouth when he lied. The way Olivia's gaze shifted slightly to the left. Just tired, I said. Thank you both for everything. In my bedroom, I locked the door and immediately went to the ensuite bathroom. I induced vomiting to purge any trace of what I had ingested, then rinsed my mouth thoroughly. My hands were steady, my mind curiously calm. I retrieved my phone and texted my attorney, Lawrence Goldman. Urgent. Need to meet tomorrow. Possible attempt on my life. Then I went to my closet and moved aside the hanging clothes to reveal a small safe. Inside was a device I'd installed 6 months earlier, when I'd first noticed things disappearing from my medicine cabinet. My blood pressure medication, specifically. Call it paranoia or intuition, but I'd had security cameras discreetly placed throughout the common areas of my house. The system backed up to an encrypted cloud service only I and Lawrence could access. I could hear my children moving downstairs, their voices low but excited. I connected to the live feed on my tablet and watched as they gathered in the kitchen. Do you think she drank enough? Xavier asked, emptying my barely touched wine glass down the sink. Olivia nodded. Combined with her medication, it won't take much. The antifreeze is untraceable once it metabolizes. It'll look like kidney failure, natural causes for a woman her age. How long? Xavier's voice was impatient. A few hours, maybe by morning. We should stay just to be sure. If she calls out, we were just being attentive children spending the night after her party. Olivia's clinical detachment was chilling. Once it's done, we move fast. Xavier continued. The will gives us everything equally. We sell this place, liquidate her investments, and split it all before anyone starts asking questions. $5 million each at least, Olivia confirmed. More than enough to cover your company's debts and my divorce settlement. I sat on the edge of my bed, the tablet's blue light illuminating my face in the darkness. I should have felt something. Rage, grief, heartbreak. Instead, there was only a cold, crystalline clarity. For years, I had taught my children about consequences, about integrity. Clearly, those lessons had failed. It was time for a different kind of education. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my armchair by the window, watching the moon track across the sky, the tablet on my lap replaying my children's conversation. Their voices, so familiar, once so beloved, now sounded alien, monstrous. I had changed their diapers, kissed scraped knees, celebrated every milestone. And this was their gratitude. By dawn, I had formulated a plan. Not an emotional reaction, I was beyond emotion now, but a strategic response. My children had failed to understand a fundamental truth about me. I hadn't risen to CFO by being sentimental. I had always been the practical one, the problem solver. Henry had been the warm parent, the hugger, the bedtime story reader. After his death, I had tried to be both mother and father, but perhaps I had only ever succeeded at being provider. Well, that provision was about to end. At 7, I heard movement downstairs. I deliberately made noise in the bathroom, letting water run loudly, then staggered out into the hallway. Olivia was there immediately, her face a mask of concern. "Mom, are you okay? You don't look well." "I feel strange," I mumbled, leaning heavily against the wall. Dizzy, my visions blurry. Xavier appeared behind her, and I caught their quick exchange of glances. Satisfaction, poorly disguised as worry. "Let's get you back to bed," Xavier said, taking my arm. "Should we call a doctor?" "No," I said quickly, then moderated my tone. "No, I'm sure it's just... I didn't sleep well. Maybe some breakfast will help." "I'll make you some tea," Olivia offered. I wondered if she planned to add more poison to ensure the job was done. Back in my room, I pretended to rest while texting Lawrence. "Coming to your office at 10. Have the documents ready. Also, bring Dr. Feldman." Stephen Feldman was not only my physician, but a respected toxicologist who had sometimes served as an expert witness in Lawrence's cases. At 9, I told my children I felt better and wanted to shower. Once alone, I dressed carefully in one of my tailored business suits, armor of a sort, and packed a small overnight bag. When I emerged, they both looked surprised. "Mom, where are you going? You should rest," Xavier protested. "I have a meeting with Lawrence about some retirement paperwork," I said, my voice steady. "I won't be long." "I can drive you," Olivia offered too quickly. "No need. I've already called a car." I moved toward the stairs, noting how they flanked me, as if afraid I might escape. "At least let me make you a coffee for the road," Xavier insisted. "I'll get something on the way." I reached the foyer and turned to face them. For a moment, I allowed myself to really look at them. These strangers wearing my children's faces. "I'll be back this afternoon. We can talk then." The car I'd ordered was waiting in the driveway. As we pulled away, I watched my children in the doorway, their expressions a mixture of confusion and frustration. Their mother should have been dead or dying, not dressed for business and leaving the house. At Lawrence's office, Dr. Feldman was waiting. He drew blood samples immediately, sending them for rush toxicology screening. "If they used ethylene glycol, antifreeze, we need to start treatment right away," he explained. "Even small amounts can cause permanent damage." Lawrence, a man in his 70s who had been my friend since law school, looked grave. "Lillian, this is... I don't even have words." "I do," I replied. "Attempted murder, conspiracy, and I have it all on video." While we waited for the test results, Lawrence prepared the documents I had requested. Revisions to my will, power of attorney forms, transfer of property deeds. "Are you certain about this?" he asked more than once. "It's scorched earth, Lillian." "They tried to burn me first," I answered simply. Dr. Feldman returned with the results 2 hours later. "You were right," he said grimly. "Ethylene glycol in your system, though at low levels, not enough to cause critical damage. We'll need to administer fomepizole to block the metabolism of the toxin and possibly dialysis. I've arranged for a private room at Hartford Hospital. How long will I need to stay?" "At least 48 hours for observation." "This is serious, Lillian." I nodded. "Will there be permanent damage?" "With immediate treatment, unlikely." But it was close. He hesitated. "We should contact the police." "Not yet," I said. "First, I need to secure my assets. Then we can discuss criminal charges." Lawrence looked troubled. "If you die before this is resolved..." "I won't," I cut him off. "But if something happens, you have my sworn statements and the video evidence. Make sure they pay." At the hospital, as the nurses hooked me up to IV medication, I made final calls to set my plan in motion. By evening, I was feeling physically better, though the emotional numbness remained. I still couldn't access any feelings of grief or betrayal, only a cold determination to deliver consequences. Around 8 that night, my phone buzzed with texts from both children, asking where I was, why I hadn't returned home. I didn't respond. Let them wonder. Let them worry about what had gone wrong, whether their plan had failed, whether I knew. The following morning, Lawrence visited, bringing the papers for my signature. "It's done," he said when I had signed the final document. "The trust is established, the transfer's complete. They can't touch any of it now. And the house? The security company will handle the installation today, as you requested. The locks have already been changed." He paused. "Your children have called my office 6 times. They're frantic." "Good," I said, feeling the first spark of satisfaction. "Have you prepared the letter?" He nodded, pulling an envelope from his briefcase. "It will be delivered tomorrow morning, as instructed." "Perfect." I took the envelope, examining the formal letterhead of Goldman & Associates. "What time will the officers arrive?" 10 a.m. with the warrant. The evidence from your security system is more than enough. They'll be arrested for attempted murder and conspiracy." I handed the envelope back to him. "Then everything is ready." Lawrence took my hand, his expression pained. "Lillian, I've known you for 40 years. Are you absolutely sure this is what you want? They're still your children." I withdrew my hand. "No, Lawrence. They stopped being my children the moment they decided I was worth more dead than alive. I was discharged from the hospital the following afternoon, but I didn't go home. Instead, Lawrence drove me to the Four Seasons in Hartford, where I had reserved a suite. We had timed everything precisely. By now, my children would have received Lawrence's letter, informing them of an urgent family matter, requiring their presence at my home at 10 a.m. sharp. "The officers are in position," Lawrence confirmed as he helped me settle into the suite. "Detective Reeves will call when it's done." "Thank you." I sat at the desk by the window, gazing out at the city skyline. "Have you arranged the video feed?" Lawrence nodded, opening his laptop. "The security company set up remote access. We can watch everything in real time." We didn't have to wait long. At precisely 9:50 a.m., Olivia's Mercedes pulled into my circular driveway, followed closely by Xavier's Tesla. They looked anxious as they approached the front door, trying the handle and then using their keys, only to find the locks changed. "Mom?" Xavier called, peering through the sidelight windows. "Are you in there?" Olivia took out her phone, presumably calling me. I watched my cell phone light up on the desk beside me, her name flashing on the screen. I let it ring. At 10 a.m. exactly, 3 unmarked police cars pulled up behind my children's vehicles. Detective Reeves, a somber woman in her 40s whom I had met at the hospital, emerged from the first car, accompanied by uniformed officers. "Olivia and Xavier Harlow?" she asked, though she knew exactly who they were. "Yes," Olivia answered, her physician's authority evident in her posture. "Who are you?" "We're trying to check on our mother. I'm Detective Sarah Reeves, Major Crimes Division." She displayed her badge. "I have a warrant for your arrests on charges of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder against Lillian Harlow." The shock on their faces was almost theatrical. Xavier immediately began protesting, too loudly, too adamantly, while Olivia went perfectly still, her surgical training showing in her controlled reaction. "This is absurd," Xavier was saying. "Our mother is missing. We've been trying to find her." "Your mother is safe," Detective Reeves interrupted. "And she has provided evidence of your attempt to poison her during her birthday celebration 2 nights ago." "Evidence? What evidence?" Olivia's voice had turned cold, calculating. I could almost see her mind working, assessing the damage, looking for exits. In answer, Detective Reeves held up her phone, playing a clip from my security footage, the damning conversation in my kitchen after the party. The color drained from both their faces as they heard their own voices discussing my murder. The officers moved in, reciting Miranda rights as they handcuffed my children. I watched, feeling nothing but a clinical satisfaction, like completing a difficult financial analysis. This was simple mathematics. Action and consequence, debit and credit. "Mrs. Harlow wants you to know," I heard Detective Reeves tell them as they were led to the police cars, "that there is additional evidence being processed. The wine bottle has been recovered and is being tested. Your electronic devices have been subpoenaed, and she will be pressing charges to the fullest extent of the law." As the police cars pulled away, Lawrence closed the laptop, "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "Perfectly," I replied, though the word held no real meaning anymore. Was I all right? Would I ever be again? These were philosophical questions without practical value, so I set them aside. "What now?" Lawrence asked. "Now we wait for their attorneys to call. It won't be long." I was right. Within 3 hours, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Bernard Kleinman, one of the state's most prominent criminal defense attorneys, had been retained. By Daniel, Olivia's husband, I presumed, as he was the only one with immediate access to that kind of money. "Mrs. Harlow," Kleinman began, his voice professionally sympathetic. "This is clearly a terrible misunderstanding." "Is it, Mr. Kleinman?" I interrupted. "Did you review the evidence before making that assessment?" A slight pause. "My clients assure me, your clients were recorded discussing the murder of their mother for financial gain. They were caught on camera admitting to poisoning me with antifreeze. Toxicology reports confirm the presence of ethylene glycol in my bloodstream. Please don't insult my intelligence by calling this a misunderstanding." Another pause. Longer this time. "What do you want, Mrs. Harlow?" Now we came to it. The negotiation. "I want them to suffer, Mr. Kleinman. Not just through incarceration, though that will certainly be part of it. I want them to lose everything, as they intended for me to lose my life. Mrs. Harlow, with all due respect, vindictiveness won't help anyone here. Your children made a terrible mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, Mr. Kleinman. Planning your mother's murder is a choice, and choices have consequences." I could hear papers shuffling as he regrouped. "What specifically are you proposing?" "I'm not proposing anything. I'm informing you of what has already occurred. As of yesterday afternoon, I have transferred all of my assets into an irrevocable trust. My children have been permanently removed as beneficiaries. Additionally, the startup capital I provided to Xavier's company has been called due immediately, as per our original agreement in case of criminal activity. I've also contacted the Medical Licensing Board regarding Olivia's involvement in an attempted murder, using her medical knowledge of toxins." Silence on the line. "Furthermore," I continued, "I've provided sworn statements to the prosecutors detailing decades of financial support to both my children, including paying off Olivia's medical school debt and financing Xavier's business ventures. I've estimated the total at approximately $3 million per child. I will be filing civil suits to recover these funds on grounds of fraud and unjust enrichment. You can't possibly expect to recoup—" "Oh, I don't expect to receive much money back, Mr. Kleinman, but the suits will be public record. Everyone will know what they did. Their friends, colleagues, Xavier's investors, Olivia's patients. Their reputations will be destroyed. That's worth far more than any monetary judgment." Kleinman's professional demeanor slipped momentarily. "Jesus Christ, Mrs. Harlow, they're your children." "Not anymore." My voice remained steady. "Mr. Kleinman, I spent 35 years in corporate finance. I specialized in hostile takeovers and debt restructuring. I dismantled companies that were far more formidable opponents than my children. They chose to view me as nothing more than a balance sheet, an asset to be liquidated when convenient. I'm simply responding in kind." "What about a plea deal?" he asked, desperation creeping into his tone. "If they cooperate, I've instructed the prosecutor to reject any plea offers. I want a trial, Mr. Kleinman. I want every detail of their betrayal on public record. I want them to sit in that courtroom and watch as the security footage plays. I want them to hear the medical experts testify about exactly what antifreeze poisoning does to the human body, how I would have suffered if their plan had succeeded." Lawrence, who had been listening, gave me a concerned look. This went beyond what we had discussed, but I was beyond caring. "Even if they serve minimal time," I continued, "they will never recover from this. Xavier's company will collapse when investors pull out. No hospital will grant Olivia privileges once this becomes public. Their spouses will likely divorce them to avoid the taint of association. They will lose their homes to legal fees. They will end up exactly as they planned for me, alone and discarded." I heard Kleinman exhale slowly. "I'll convey your position to my clients." "Good. And Mr. Kleinman, the security system at my house is still running. If anyone attempts to enter the property or remove anything, they will be arrested for trespassing and theft. After hanging up, I turned to Lawrence. Cancel my flight. He looked confused. To London? I thought you were leaving next week. I've changed my mind. I'm staying for the trial. I want to look them in the eyes every single day. Lillian, Lawrence said softly, this level of retribution, will it bring you peace? I considered his question carefully. Peace was never the objective, Lawrence. Justice was. And justice isn't supposed to be comfortable, not for the guilty, and sometimes not for the survivors either. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks after the arrests. During that time, I moved back into my house, though it no longer felt like home. Every room held echoes of the birthday party, phantom voices raising glasses in false celebration. I hired a professional cleaning service to remove all traces of that night. But some stains exist beyond the physical. I received calls from friends and former colleagues who had heard about the arrests. Most expressed shock and sympathy, offering the expected platitudes. I accepted their concern with polite detachment, revealing nothing of my plans. A few, those who knew me best, seemed unsurprised by my composed response. They had seen me handle corporate crises with the same methodical precision I was now applying to my personal apocalypse. 3 days before the hearing, Detective Reeves visited to prepare me for what to expect. The evidence is overwhelming, she assured me, sitting across from me in my living room. The security footage, the toxicology reports, the bottle itself, which tested positive for antifreeze. Their digital footprints. We found searches on Olivia's computer about untraceable poisons and fatal doses. And yet, they'll plead not guilty, I said. It wasn't a question. Most likely, Kleinman will try to create reasonable doubt, suggest alternative explanations. She hesitated. Mrs. Harlow, I should warn you, the defense may get ugly. They might try to paint you as difficult, controlling, even mentally unstable. I smiled thinly. Detective, I spent decades in a male-dominated industry. I've been called worse things than difficult or unstable. I can handle whatever they throw at me. I'm sure you can. She studied me carefully. If you don't mind my asking, how are you coping? Most victims in your position would be devastated. I suppose I'm not most victims. I poured her another cup of tea. I processed my grief in those first 24 hours. Now I'm focused on resolution. She nodded slowly. I've been a detective for 15 years. I've seen all kinds of family betrayals. But parents trying to murder parents for inheritance, it's surprisingly common. What's uncommon is a victim with your resources and resolve. They underestimated me, I said simply. Fatal mistake in business. Fatal mistake in life. The morning of the preliminary hearing arrived with the season's first frost, coating my garden in silvery white. I dressed with particular care. A charcoal gray suit, pearl earrings, minimal makeup. I wanted to appear exactly as I was. Formidable, unbroken, and utterly without sentimentality. Lawrence drove me to the courthouse. News vans lined the street. The story of a prominent businessman and a surgeon attempting to murder their CFO mother had apparently captured public interest. I ignored the reporters shouting questions as Lawrence escorted me inside. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, the wooden benches polished by decades of anxious witnesses and grieving families. I sat in the front row behind the prosecution table, my posture perfect, face composed. When they brought in Olivia and Xavier, I looked directly at them without flinching. They had changed in just 2 weeks. Xavier's designer stubble had grown into an unkempt beard, his confident swagger replaced by a hunched guardedness. Olivia's surgical precision was evident in her appearance, hair neatly braided, orange jumpsuit worn with dignity. But her eyes held a new wariness. Both stared at me, their expressions a complex mixture of hatred, fear, and something that might have been remorse in people capable of it. I met their gaze steadily until they looked away first. The hearing proceeded as expected. The prosecution presented the overwhelming evidence, including excerpts from the security footage that elicited gasps from the gallery. When the antifreeze-laced wine bottle was entered into evidence, I noticed Xavier flinch slightly. Kleinman argued vigorously for bail, citing my children's community ties and professional standing. The prosecutor countered with the flight risk they posed, given their financial resources and the severity of the charges. Your Honor, the prosecutor added, these defendants showed calculated premeditation in attempting to murder their own mother for financial gain. If they would poison the woman who gave them life, what moral boundary would stop them from fleeing justice? The judge denied bail. As my children were led away, Olivia turned toward me, her lips forming words I couldn't hear. I remained expressionless, though I would later wonder what she had tried to say. An apology? A justification? It hardly mattered now. Outside the courthouse, Lawrence guided me through the press gauntlet to a waiting car. I declined to comment, despite the microphones thrust in my face and the shouted questions about whether I could ever forgive my children. Forgiveness. Such a peculiar concept, as if emotional absolution could erase actions and their consequences, as if saying, "I forgive you," would restitch the fabric of trust they had so deliberately shredded. Back at home, I received an unexpected visitor. Aurora, Xavier's wife of 5 years, stood on my doorstep, her eyes red-rimmed. "Lillian," she began, her voice breaking. "I had no idea. You have to believe me." I regarded her coolly. "Come in, Aurora. You look like you could use some tea." In the kitchen, she collapsed into tears while I prepared Earl Grey with practiced movements. "I've filed for divorce," she said finally. "I can't. How could he? How could they?" I placed a cup before her. How, indeed. The police questioned me for hours. They think I might have known. She looked up desperately. "But I didn't. I swear I didn't." "I believe you," I said, and found that I did. Aurora had always seemed genuinely fond of me, uninterested in my money or status. Xavier was always careful to compartmentalize. She nodded miserably. "They're saying he might get 20 years. Olivia, too. If convicted of attempted first-degree murder, they could receive up to 25 years, I corrected. Though with good behavior, they might serve less. Aurora stared at me, perhaps shocked by my matter-of-fact tone. "Don't you feel anything? They're your children." "Of course I feel something, Aurora. I feel betrayed. I feel violated. I feel as though the last 4 decades of my life were based on a fundamental misunderstanding. That I believed I was raising decent human beings when in fact I was nurturing vipers. But they're still... Still what? Still the babies I held? Still the children I read to? Those people no longer exist, if they ever did." I sipped my tea. "The adults who plotted my murder exist, and they will face adult consequences." She wiped her eyes. "Daniels left town, disappeared the day after Olivia's arrest, emptied their joint accounts first. This didn't surprise me. Daniel had always struck me as opportunistic, attracted to Olivia's success and status. A wise decision, given the circumstances. I don't know how to process this." Aurora looked around the kitchen, as if searching for answers in the polished granite countertops. "Everything is falling apart." "Yes," I agreed. "That was my experience on my birthday as well." After Aurora left, I sat alone in my study and allowed myself to consider, just briefly, what life might have been like if things had gone differently. If my children had simply waited for their inheritance, supported me through my retirement years, behaved with basic human decency, we might have had holiday gatherings, travel adventures, the ordinary rhythms of family life. I might have known grandchildren someday. But such reflections were pointless now. They had made their choice, and in doing so, they had made mine for me as well. The path ahead was clear: prosecution, testimony, sentencing. And after that, a life rebuilt without the foundation I had thought was unshakable. I opened my laptop and began composing an email to the realtor. This house, with its tainted memories, would be the next thing to go. I would find somewhere new, somewhere without ghosts or betrayals embedded in the walls. The future stretched before me, empty of the people I had once thought would populate my later years, but not empty of purpose. Never that. 6 months passed before the trial began. 6 months of pretrial motions, psychological evaluations, and increasingly desperate offers from Kleinman that the prosecutor, on my explicit instructions, rejected. 6 months during which I sold my Connecticut house, purchased a waterfront condo in Boston, and systematically dismantled every aspect of the life I had built around my children. I donated their childhood possessions, the photo albums, school trophies, preserved art projects, to a landfill. I removed them from every insurance policy, medical directive, and legal document. I even changed my emergency contacts to Lawrence and my old assistant from Meridian. It was a methodical excision, like removing a tumor that had been silently growing for decades. The morning the trial began, I woke before dawn. The Boston harbor was still dark, the water a sheet of black glass reflecting distant city lights. I would drive to Hartford, sit in that courtroom, and watch justice unfold without flinching. This was my new purpose, to witness their reckoning. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Harriet Lancaster entered the courtroom. She was in her 60s, a veteran jurist known for her no-nonsense approach. Perfect. The jury selection had been painstaking, with Kleinman fighting to exclude anyone with strong family values or particular reverence for motherhood. The resulting panel was diverse: 4 men, 8 women, ranging from a 26-year-old software engineer to a 70-year-old retired school principal. The prosecution's opening statement was devastating in its simplicity. "This case is about greed," the prosecutor, Martin Torres, told the jury. "Not casual, everyday greed, the kind that might lead someone to take the larger slice of cake. This is about a greed so profound, so consuming, that it led 2 successful, educated, privileged adults to poison their own mother for an inheritance they would have eventually received anyway." He outlined the evidence methodically: the security footage, the toxicology reports, the internet searches for untraceable poisons, the financial motives. Then he played a short clip from my security system, Olivia's clinical voice discussing how antifreeze would metabolize in my system, Xavier calculating what my estate was worth to each of them. Several jurors visibly recoiled. One older woman glanced at me with undisguised pity. I kept my expression neutral, my gaze forward. Kleinman's opening was a masterclass in misdirection. He spoke of family tensions, of misunderstandings, of my controlling nature and withholding of emotional approval. He suggested that the conversation captured on video was a dark joke between siblings with admittedly inappropriate gallows humor about a mother who had always made them feel they were disappointments. "Mrs. Harlow expected perfection," Kleinman told the jury, gesturing toward me. "When her children inevitably fell short of this impossible standard, she wielded financial support as a weapon, threatening to withdraw it whenever they displeased her. This case isn't about attempted murder. It's about a family dynamic so toxic that it poisoned the judgment of 2 otherwise exemplary individuals." I almost admired the audacity. Almost. Over the next 3 weeks, the prosecution built its case with methodical precision. The toxicologist explained how ethylene glycol works in the human body, how it would have caused a painful death if I had consumed more of the wine. The digital forensics expert showed the jury Olivia's Google searches: untraceable poisons, how much antifreeze is lethal, can antifreeze poisoning look natural. On the 4th day, they played the complete security footage, nearly 40 minutes of my children discussing my murder in my kitchen while I supposedly slept upstairs. Watching it in the courtroom, surrounded by strangers, was different from viewing it alone in my bedroom or with Lawrence. The collective intake of breath when Xavier laughed about inheriting my art collection. The murmurs when Olivia clinically described how my organs would shut down. The weight of public judgment made it real in a way it hadn't been before. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand without looking at my children. I swore to tell the truth, then settled into the hard wooden chair and faced Martin Torres. "Mrs. Harlow," he began, "could you tell the jury about your relationship with your children prior to your birthday last year?" "I believed it was good," I said simply. "Supportive. I helped them through college, graduate school, and their early careers. I attended their weddings, holiday gatherings, celebrated their achievements. I thought we had mutual respect and affection. Were there tensions? Conflicts over money? Nothing unusual. Xavier's company had cash flow issues, and he occasionally asked for additional investment. Olivia was going through a difficult divorce settlement with her husband Daniel, who wanted half of her medical practice. But these seemed like normal family concerns, not motives for murder. For 2 hours, I detailed my life with my children, the financial support I had provided, the relationship I thought we had shared. I described discovering the poisoned wine, the hospital stay, the security footage. Throughout, I remained composed, factual, unemotional. Then Kleinman rose for cross-examination, his expression suggesting sympathetic concern that didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Harlow, would you describe yourself as a warm mother?" "Objection," Torres called. "Relevance. Goes to family dynamics, Your Honor," Kleinman argued. "Central to our defense." "I'll allow it," Judge Lancaster ruled. "The witness will answer." I met Kleinman's gaze. I would describe myself as a devoted mother. After their father died, I worked 80-hour weeks to maintain their lifestyle and education. Warmth takes many forms, Mr. Kleinman. Did you ever tell your children you loved them? Yes. How often? I didn't keep count. Would you say you were more focused on their material needs than their emotional ones? I provided everything they needed to succeed. Food, shelter, education, opportunities. If that's what you mean by material needs, then yes. For nearly 3 hours, Kleinman tried to paint me as cold, controlling, manipulative, a mother who withheld love and wielded financial support as a weapon. I refused to be provoked, answering each question with calm precision. When he finally asked if I could have misinterpreted a dark private joke between siblings, I merely raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Kleinman, my children discussed specific methods of poisoning me, the timeline of my death, and how they would divide my assets afterward. They then served me wine laced with antifreeze, which was confirmed by laboratory testing. If that was a joke, I failed to see the humor." A slight ripple of reaction ran through the jury. When the defense presented its case, neither Olivia nor Xavier took the stand, a decision that spoke volumes. Instead, Kleinman called former classmates, colleagues, and Xavier's soon-to-be ex-wife Aurora to testify about their charitable works, professional ethics, and occasional complaints about their difficult mother. None of it was enough. After just 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty on all counts. At the sentencing hearing 2 weeks later, Judge Lancaster gave them each an opportunity to speak. Xavier went first, his voice breaking. "Mom," he said, looking directly at me for the first time since the trial began. "I'm sorry. We never meant... It was just talk. We were angry, stressed about money. We said terrible things, but we didn't actually poison your wine. We would never have gone through with it. Please, Mom, please don't let them send us to prison. We're your children." Olivia, ever the pragmatist, took a different approach. "I take full responsibility for my inexcusable words and thoughts that night. I was under extreme pressure from my divorce, making poor decisions. I deeply regret the pain I've caused. I ask the court for leniency, not for my sake, but because as a surgeon, I can still contribute to society." Judge Lancaster turned to me. "Mrs. Harlow, as the victim, you have the right to make a statement before sentencing." I rose slowly, my prepared statement in hand, but as I faced the bench, I set the paper aside. "Your Honor, I have just one thing to say. Actions have consequences. My children are adults who made adult choices. They simply never expected to face adult consequences." The judge nodded gravely, then pronounced her sentence. 18 years for Olivia, 16 for Xavier. As they were led away, Olivia looked back at me one last time. Her expression wasn't hateful or pleading. It was something worse. Recognition. In that moment, she saw me clearly. Perhaps for the first time. She saw the woman who had taught her that precision matters, that vulnerabilities are weaknesses, that emotions are secondary to results. She saw herself. I left the courthouse alone, declining Lawrence's offer to drive me. The June sunshine felt almost offensive in its brightness, the world continuing as if nothing fundamental had changed. But everything had. I returned to my Boston condo that evening and stood looking out at the harbor as the sun set, casting long golden reflections across the water. The irrevocable trust I had established now funded scholarships for finance students and medical research. My will left everything to those same foundations. The circle was complete. Nothing remained of the life I had built for my children. Someone recently asked if I regret my response to their betrayal, if perhaps mercy might have been possible. But mercy requires remorse, and real remorse is not born from fear of consequences, but from genuine understanding of harm caused. My children were sorry they were caught, sorry they miscalculated, sorry their plan failed. They were never sorry for deciding I should die. So no, I don't regret my choice. Justice isn't always kind. Neither am I. And really, isn't that the most honest inheritance I could have given them?